So what I realized is that I never had a chance to really tell you where the podcast idea came from. They just don't understand. It was really created from people that I would run into, and they would tell me their stories. And they just didn't have a voice. My mom was 15 or 16 when she was pregnant with me. So I know that was hard on her because they called a caseworker in. And I'm like, oh, Lord. And they even said you might have to do some type of rehab, in-house, out-house. I don't know what it was, but I wasn't doing any of that. And I called a friend of mine and I said, hello, and welcome back to They Just Don't Understand, hosted by me, Nina Mitchell. So what I realized is that I never had a chance to really tell you where the podcast idea came from. They just don't understand. It was really created from people that I would run into, and they would tell me their stories. And they just didn't have a voice, or they just felt that their stories didn't mean anything. And I decided that I would interview those who wanted to be interviewed. And I would love to share their stories on my podcast titled, They Just Don't Understand. My desire and my passion has always been to have my own talk show. And in that talk show, I wanted to have invited guests that may be young or old, or just those who have given up on their dreams, to let them know that you're never too young or you're never too old to tell your story. Because if you can just reach one person, you've done your job. And that can trickle down to others. Because, sometimes we think that our stories aren't relevant, or our age, we get to a point where we just don't want to do it because, the devil or the enemy or whatever you want to call it has shut your mouth. And I did an audio podcast on Shut Your Mouth. And it was about when I was in 5th grade, I was the host of a talent show. I went out on stage, and when the curtains opened, I froze. So I know the enemy came at me with not speaking, because that is my talent. And so now I'm reinventing myself. And I would look forward to helping others reinvent themselves as well. Because there's no age limit to it. As long as you have breath in your body and you're able to get up the next day, you have a purpose in life. And everyone has a story. If you're interested in being a guest on my show, just let me know. I want to give my testimony. It's been something that I've been holding back on for a long time. I came into a family, there were 4 siblings. My mom was 15 or 16 when she was pregnant with me, so I know that was hard on her, being in school and having a baby at such a young age. So my grandparents took over the maternal aspects of being a mother or parenting me. And with that being said, my grandmother, in a sense, was my mother, but I knew her place and she knew her place. And so basically, I'm the matriarch of all of the cousins in the family. So let's move a little further. At the age of 19, I became pregnant. And I thought that it was by a guy that had, let's back up a little bit. Before I had her, I was dealing with a guy that was grooming me to be a prostitute. And my dad didn't like him, but he would sneak to my back door, and sometimes he would go to the back window. And it was just, he was, cute, had the curly hair. I mean, he had the looks, the smell, the leather coat, all that. And eventually one day, we moved in together because my father just did not think that he couldn't handle it. So to this day, if he was alive, he would say that I put him out, which I really didn't. He packed his own things, and I just happened to put a towel on the top of the box. And he would say that I put him out, but that's not true. I don't think he could just handle what I was going through. So this person moved in with me, and my dad still paid the rent for at least 6 months. And like I said, I was being groomed. And one day, one of his, I'm going to say it just like it is, one of his pimp friends came over. And I cooked dinner for them, and we were just all hanging out and kicking it and having a good time. And then so how it happened was after everything was over, the guy that I was with, the pimp I was with, he left to go to work, and then his friend left. So I was at home just watching TV. And I decided that, I wanted the attention that the other girls were getting from these guys. And to be truthful, I turned myself out. So what I did was I waited one night, I dressed up, I went downtown, didn't have a clue of what I was doing. And he being my pimp's friend, but he wasn't my pimp at the time. Later on, I found out that he said that I was the one that he wanted to keep at home. But I wanted to be in the game, whether I knew it or not, whether I knew what the game was. So the first person I saw when I got downtown was his friend that we had just had dinner with. And I said, hey, so what do I do? He looked at me like I was a stranger. He cussed me out. And so now I'm really lost. I don't know what to do. I don't know the girls down there. I don't know. I didn't have any idea. And I just was lost. And so I'm going to add something to this too. So we're going to pause right there, but I'm going to come back to it. During those times, the lighter skinned women could come out in the daytime and they would get the most money. And then when it got later in the evening, the darker skinned girls would get less money. And that was only because the Johns had gotten drunk by that time. And, they were ready to just, do whatever with whomever. And again, we weren't paid. I'm not going to say we, because some may have been. I'm just going to speak for myself. I wasn't paid what I felt that I was worth, even though I didn't know my self-worth, but I wasn't getting what I heard others getting. And I probably would have to do things that the other ones wouldn't have to do. They might have to sit up and just talk and, just give a little, and I'm going to be transparent, give a little hand job and get, 2,000 or 3,000. Well, I probably would have to put in the work and get 200, So it was a thing that I had to go through, and during this time, like I said, I have 4 daughters, and I always kept that away from them. I kept my relatives close to me so they would babysit and all that. And I remember a time when I was with I was only with one, well, no, I was with 2. But this one, it was always between number 1 or number 2. So number 1, he would go out and he had a Caucasian girl and he spent a lot of time with her. And I would get jealous. And so one time he left town to take her to do something, to go to Las Vegas or something. And he left the car there and told me I couldn't drive it. I said, oh no, we're not doing this. And so if you were seen driving your dude's car, your pimp's car, that means you're in the game. So I had one of the little guys in the neighborhood come and, what do you call, jury rig or pop the lock, hot wire the car, and he got it going. And so I got in that car and I drove around town so people would know that I'm the number 1 bitch, And so when he got back, when pimp number 1, the only one that had the time, I'm just saying 1 because 2 came later. But he came back and he was so upset. But I had to really make a stance, And for so long, I felt so undervalued. I felt less than. And I can also say, I'm going to add this so I can go back and forth a little bit. And I hope you can keep up with me. Like in slavery days, the lighter skinned slaves were in the house. And the darker skins were outside doing the hard work. So let's just leave it there and you can do your history and, figure out, that part of the slavery mentality. And to this day, it still can kind of go on, but it's not as that. It's kind of hidden in undercover in a sense, but we all women need to stick together. So therefore, going back forward to pimp number one, that one was the one that I had the most problem with. Oh, we would fight. Not we would fight. He would beat me up because I had to turn to like maybe going to an older man's house and he'd fall asleep on heroin or whatever it was, and I would steal all his money and I would steal his drugs and his rings. And so that's how I became somewhat validated. But remember, I did not have any validation of my own. I didn't know who I was. I was young, and that's not always an excuse because there's some young children that are grown that have been, how can you say, that have been nurtured to know their self-worth. So I don't want to blame it on anything. I don't want to blame it on my mother being young. I don't want to blame it on the man who raised me that I call my father. I wrote a book about that, but I'm going to continue to call him my father because his name was on my birth certificate. And the whole community knew that he wasn't my father. So moving forward, I'm out here walking the streets and we're driving to Vegas every now and then again. When it got late, then it was my turn. And so I would have to do more work. I would have to put in the work. And that's some of the things that my four daughters didn't understand. And they don't know the things that I sacrificed, the life that I had to live, or not if, I won't say had to live, the life that I chose to live to just be relevant in a sense in that type of game. My youngest daughter, who just turned 22 on April 15th, she told me when she was 8, she said, "Mom, I'm sorry the game chose you and you didn't choose it." And that always stuck with me. And to a point, that was right. So, that's the kind of lifestyle. And as I was writing my second book, I noticed all the details that I put in there. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was almost embarrassed to write it. But I'm so transparent because there's a lot of our ancestors, our grandparents, our mothers that went to their graves and they have not told the truth because of the things that they've done and they're ashamed of, or somebody's husband or boyfriend that they were, dealing with and they didn't want anybody to know about, and then we end up being with our cousins and marrying our second and third cousins, and it's just horrible. So that's why I choose to share my story with you, because it's needed. It's really needed. And from that point on, after I got beat up and thrown against the wall and the other girl got priority, I just, and then I got pregnant. So when I got pregnant, I thought it was pimp number one's baby, but I had left when he brought, let me just call it like it is. When he brought the white girl to our place to stay with us, like a wife-in-law and all that, I left. And I went to my oldest daughter's dad's house. And I can't remember exactly how that happened, but, oh, I know, I could tell you. He was a boyfriend of mine back in the day, but he wasn't exciting enough for me. So I went to the left when he was going to the right. So when I went to his house, I ended up getting pregnant by him. So pimp number one came to the house and begged me to come back. He had put the white girl out and everything. And then I started showing. So then I couldn't do anything. So it was kind of good, But that didn't mean he stayed at home with me anymore. I still was alone. And so when I had the baby, he had his mother come up to the hospital. Now, my oldest daughter, I'll name names later, but we'll just leave it at that for now. But my oldest daughter, her eyes weren't, like big, like, African American, even though she has, black in her. But her dad is Filipino, and her hair was straight. And so when pimp number one's mom came and held her, she just said, "She's beautiful." She didn't say, "This is your child" or anything. But number one wanted me to have a baby by him so bad so he can control and all that. But before he died, up until he died, she will say that's always her dad. And even her biological dad even respects that because of what we went through. because for 4 years, I didn't tell her that I knew who her dad was. And to be truthful, I knew, but I didn't want to say because I still wanted, I was in love with pimp number one and I just still wanted to be in that life. And so one of my oldest daughter's relatives saw me at a college. I had enrolled in college. And I remember this day I was pushing her in a stroller and he stopped me. He said, that's, I almost said the name. He said, that's so-and-so's baby. And I didn't pay him any attention. I said no. But by the time she turned 4, I did tell her who her real father was. Now, I didn't know at this time that I was telling something that was going to come to fruition later in my life, because to this day, I don't know who my real father is. So anytime that I got pregnant, and I have 4 girls by 4 different men, and 2 of them, I was still in the game. So basically, I had been snorting cocaine because that was like the luxury high. I never did anything in front of them. Even if I did it while they were home, they were in the bed. And when they would wake up, I would have my robe on, like, I had just woke up and I was cooking their breakfast. And as soon as they went to school, I would go to sleep. But the thing is that I never, ever had that type of lifestyle in their face. Now, they saw a different side of that lifestyle. They saw the guy coming over, not the John or anything, their so-called dad, pimp dad or whatever. They saw that, and then the places they took her, I didn't know because I wasn't with them. But I trusted him to do the right thing, and everything turned out okay. So by the time I had daughter number 2, I knew who her father was, and he was also a pimp. I just don't like that word. But anyway, we're going to use it because we're going to be transparent here. But he also had a job at a trucking company. So he worked in the daytime and he did his pimping at night. And so he was a good guy. He was really a good guy. And he didn't do drugs. He didn't do any of that. He just knew that I was with the pimp number 1 at one time, and now he had me. So he's going to do the same thing. And he also had other girls. Back in those days, everybody had, access to women and all that type of stuff. And so he was they would call him a square because he had a job. But he was holding it down, and then he was still pimping at night and all that. But one thing about him, every Sunday, it was family day. And he took that time out that we all together as a family would go out. Even my oldest daughter would go out with us. His biological daughter number 2, would get upset because he always would let her come. And she wanted time alone with her own father, right? And I'm going to say something in between this before we get to daughter number 3. I had 3 to 4 abortions, and the reason why I had them is because I didn't know who their father was. And again, this was deeply rooted in me because I didn't know. Now, this is something I didn't know. It was just something that was in me to always, if I'm going to have a kid, let them know who their father is. I never talked about their father's dad. If they wanted to come over and take them places, I would, I never kept the kids away from their dad. Ever, never, ever. And so he would come and take both of them. I had 2 at the time. And his natural daughter would really get mad. Daughter number 2 would get mad because she always had to be with the older sister with her dad. And, they kind of got over it a little bit, but that was that. And that was kind of, calm. And there were some things that happened in his life that's not my place to tell because that's his story. So I'll go on to daughter number 3. Now, by the time I had daughter number 3, I was kind of, no, I wasn't kind of nothing. I was still in the game, but I wasn't on the street. I had ran into her dad, who was the seller. So they were the dope dealers. And my dad again said, You don't need to be messing with those guys. They doing some heavy stuff, and I believe they mafia motivated. And I didn't care. They had nice cars. I could get powder anytime I wanted to. I was the stuff. It was just something in me where my self-esteem was so low, and it had a lot to do with the color of my skin, to be truthful. As I'm talking now and as I write, it was just that the darker skinned women sometimes just didn't get the same chance. And I'm not saying all didn't. It all really comes from your self-esteem and how you validate yourself. Or if you have a father in the house that validates you and tells you you're beautiful, tells you you can do everything, anything you want to do, that really supports you. And I didn't have that. My grandfather and my grandmother, they pretty much raised me. And so by the time I had daughter number three, I was still dibbling and dabbling, but I wasn't snorting then, because her dad, who passed away, he was putting it in rock form. Like I said, they were big time. And so I was smoking it by that time. And I'm not going to say too much about that because the really deep, deep details are going to be in the book. But all I can say is when I went to the doctor, and I had such a nice doctor, she just believed everything I said. She was so nice because I wanted to have this front that I was perfect and that I didn't do anything that, anybody else was doing, because I was doing it in the closet. I was fooling myself. I let the enemy run my mind. Until one day I looked at a picture of myself and my cheeks were swollen in. And that's the day I quit. But before I did that, I had daughter number three. And when the doctor came in after delivery, they found drugs in her system. And the look that my physician gave me, it hurt my heart, because I don't like to disappoint people. And that goes from way back with my grandparents, and all that. And one thing I can say about my grandparents, regardless of what kind of lifestyle I had, they always supported me. I could be high off of Valiums, pills, whatever, and fall asleep on the middle of their floor. And if my mom had came to town, she wouldn't let her bother me. She said, leave her alone, let her sleep. So that's where I get the love that I have for my grandchildren, because there was a time that I couldn't really just support them monetarily. And then it came a time where God blessed me that I could. But you have to be careful with that too, because they'll expect it and you'll lose respect from them. They won't respect you. And if they've been molded in a way that they're not to respect you, because maybe the oldest daughter, she would have gifts on her bed every day that she came home from school. And so, if I didn't give her way, she would get upset. And then when she had kids and I didn't give her way, she would complain to the kids, oh, grandma's this and mom's this and mom's that. So they were molded. They were molded. And to no fault of their own, it's just the way it was. And I heard a message, and I know I go back and forth, but I'm going to come back to it. I heard a message that says, it had to happen this way. It had to happen this way to build strength and character in me. And I'm telling this story transparently because I know I'm not the only one that have went through that. And if I am the only one, maybe I can help the ones that may be headed down that road not do the things that I've done. And so now, daughter number three, I was snorting it too, but I was doing mostly smoking. And so again, like I said, when I had her, the doctor said, I'm disappointed in you. And I never wanted anybody to be disappointed in me. That hurt my feelings. And so they didn't have the tags around the ankle that, if you take your baby outside a certain area, the alarm would go off. And so I felt that because they called a caseworker in. And I'm like, oh, Lord. And they even said you might have to do some type of rehab, in-house, out-house. I don't know what it was, but I wasn't doing any of that. And I called a friend of mine, and I said, I want you to meet me on the side of the building. And when I call you, I'm coming out of the hospital with my baby. I couldn't go home to my grandmother. I didn't live with my grandmother, but I respected her with everything in me. I could not go to the hospital and be pregnant and come home without a baby. I just couldn't do it. I could not do it. And I'm going to back up a little bit on that. My grandfather would have to take me every time that I got pregnant. And this time, when I had that baby, he pulled up because it was probably like 1 o'clock in the morning. I was smoking. And all of a sudden, I stood up and another female was with me. I stood up and my water broke. As soon as I told her my water broke, she took off running. She left. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay. So I called my grandfather. He came pick me up. And before I could get out the car and close the door, he sped off. And so when I walked in, the physicians and, the people at the counter said, are you alone? Is anyone with you? And I was crying. I said, no one's with me. I'm alone. And so when my doctor came in and she was disappointed and all that, and I felt that the caseworkers were going to take my baby, I set up a plan so I could, take her home. I didn't care what I had to go through. I was taking my baby home. And God blessed me with a caseworker that came in, and I guess by the way I was talking to her, that she saw something in me. And so what I did was, I told her, I just ran into the wrong type of people. And so she said, what I'm going to do, I'm going to let you take your baby home. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, I'm taking my baby home regardless. And when I took my baby home and then they came to view my living situation, I've always been real tidy. And to this day, I don't like things out of place. Even when I left town, things have to be in a certain place. And she came and she said, we're going to close your case. I believe you just were around the wrong crowd. And that's how that happened. That's exactly how that happened. And from there on, everything was good. And I still dibbled and dabbled. But by the time I had daughter number 4, now they're all born in different generations, like 10 years. I'm not even going to get into that. But they're different years, whatever. Let's stop right there. So when I had daughter number 4, I said, I want to do it the right way this time. I want to be married and have a baby. So I was working at the University of Washington as an electrician and met a man through my boss. He said he was a good guy. So, we didn't do anything before marriage. I said, I'm doing it right this time. And we ended up having a little girl. And she's the youngest. And she's 22, like I said, as of April 15th. And she has been such a blessing to me. She taught me how to love unconditional. She taught me that now this is a touchy situation right here. I have nothing against, let me see if I can get it right, LGQBTIA plus. If I did it, hooray. But no one accepted her because of her actions or her skin color, or she never was one of the kind of kids that liked the hip hop and all that. She was in anime and all that type of thing. So the community that accepted her was that community. And so she tampered a little bit in that, and I still support her. I love everybody. I don't care what you do. That's your choice. I love you as a person, but don't try to push it on me like I won't try to push myself on you. And that's how I am. I love everybody. And so, because your life is your life and my life is my life. And so she's with a male now, and kudos to her. Whatever. I stay in my lane. I'll put it like that. I have 4 daughters that I need to stay in my own lane because they all have their own path. And there's nothing I can do to change any of it, whether I like it or not. I just respect them, and I demand that same respect back for me. So to be in closing, let me see, how can I close this? That don't have any expectations on your children, and do not expect them to be a certain type of way, because the enemy is out here to kill, steal, and destroy. And that spirit can jump into anyone. And I've had that in my family where I've had maybe 1 daughter not talk to me. Then there's 2 not talk to me. And that hurt me because the enemy knows how much I love my kids. I will do anything for my kids, because just like the love that my grandmother imparted in me, I do that with my kids and my grandkids. But with my grandkids, like I said, my oldest daughter was the only one that had the kids, and we're working on it, and it's gotten a lot better. But they were molded. They were molded, and that was the enemy's doing. It wasn't. Yeah, we'll just leave it like that. It was the enemy's doing. He set it up so it could hurt me really bad. And for a while, it did for so long, until I'd say, and when COVID hit in 2020, I really had to get close to the Lord because I'm a people person. And when we couldn't go anywhere, or, everything had shut down, I got so close to God that it changed my life. It really, he's still working on me now. I'm not perfect. I'm not saying, thus says the Lord, but I will give you a scripture or two, or, I'm not in your face thumping Bibles. No, because nobody on this earth is perfect. But I have noticed changes in me, and I don't expect anybody else to validate me because I know who I am. I have established boundaries. I know my self-worth. So that's what I'm on here. The basic bottom line is, don't let anyone tell you what you can be, who you can be, what you can't be. You're too old for this, too young for that. Because you know what? Long as you have breath in your body and you're able to wake up and move your limbs and get around, you always have a chance. There's always something that you can be doing. And just take the risk. Just step out on faith. That's what I did. And that's how I'm here now. To be truthful, transparency, sometimes I don't know what I'm doing. I just follow my spirit. And God leads me to the right people. So if he could work it out in my life from where I came from, he could do it for you. And that's what I want to end in with my children, basically geared to them and to you who's listening. And hopefully it will help you. But there are some things that they just don't understand. Thank you for listening. And this is Nina Mitchell signing out.